Hello viewers, welcome to my second video in this two-part series on penciling and inking the G.I. Joe character Beachhead. If you watched the other video, I appreciate it. Appreciate it if you go back and select the like button if you got something out of it. For this video, I'm going to be inking over my pencils that I created in part 1. So to start out, I'm going to be using this .3 Faber-Castell, and I'm just going to go around and outline the whole figure. So right now I'm not thinking about line weight. I'm just thinking about I use the .3 because I want a little bit of a heavier line as an outline for everything. And I'm just highlighting the main structures here. So right now I'm going over his backpack. Pretty much just outlining everything. I broke this this project up into two videos because it just was going to be a really long video. You know, editing together my pencils and inks, and I thought it'd be a good idea to just break it up a little bit. I did still kind of speed up the recording a little bit for time's sake. Let me know if you'd rather see it at the normal pace. I had one request to leave the video at the normal pace, and I'll probably do it. It just seems so long. So, but maybe if you're watching this, you're all right with that. You're putting this on and drawing something. You know, you may be drawing at your own drawing table and on whatever else you're working on. Well, I'm drawing on YouTube. If you're watching this video, that's what I do sometimes. I put on somebody else's, like I might put on Daniel Warren Johnson this Friday night with D-Dubs, and I'll be working on my own project. Well, he's drawing on the YouTube channel. So maybe you if you'd like to see more videos like that, just at normal speed, so you can just kind of have this playing in the background where you're doing your own illustration, let me know. If at the end of this video you see the end product and you really like it, you do have an opportunity to own it. I do have this currently posted on my website for sale. So if you'd like this illustration, you know, there's only one of them. So you know, first come, first serve. Whoever gets on there and purchases it first. It's on my website, inkwarfare.com. If you just go to the store page, you'll be able to find it there, along with some of my other illustrations from some of my trading cards and from my other YouTube videos. You can find me on Instagram. I am at ink.warfare on Instagram. Ink Warfare was taken, so I had to settle for ink.warfare. Like I said, my webpage is www.inkwarfare.com. But if you are watching and maybe you've watched a few of my videos, you know, I'd appreciate it if you subscribe. It's one way, or like the video. It's one way of me, you know, getting feedback. I have no idea if anybody likes the video, if everybody's watching it but not selecting the like button. I guess I could assume maybe nobody likes it, but I don't know. Now, I spoke about this knife in the other video and how I kind of illustrated a little too close to the thigh. I am going to fix that later on. I don't do it here, but rest assured I will fix it by the end of this video. Like I said in the pencil video, I probably, if I did this over, I would angle the handle of the knife a little bit further away from his thigh, just to add a little bit more dimension there. Now, when you're inking, there's a certain element of patience and taking your time on many of the lines, but also there's something to be said for spontaneity of your lines. Some lines you can be more spontaneous with, and some you've got to kind of discern yourself. What lines are going to look better if you just spontaneously hash them out. It might be a long, several feathered lines that might look better if you spontaneously kind of quickly work them out rather than slowly draw them, and then you have maybe a shaky line. That's what I find. Sometimes if I'm thinking about it too much, I end up with a shaky line just because I'm trying to get the line so perfect, and it just doesn't happen. You're sometimes better off just taking a quick swipe. But once again, I'm just doing an outline here just to see what I have to deal with. When you start laying inks down, the pencil drawing's fairly light because I drew that in 2H, and I didn't really press real hard, so it's not real dark. So as the inks start to take shape, you really get an idea of how your illustration is going to look in the end, and how it appears in space as it gets darker and darker as you add more line weight and shading and values. You really get an idea of how successful the illustration is going to be. So this is actually his pouch that has the magazines in it that the action figure comes with. It's kind of swung over to the side, so you can just kind of see it out over the side of his hip here. And then he has his sidearm there. It's on his left leg. Hope I got that right. Now I'm going to come back in later, and wherever I want these lines to be a little heavier, I'm going to add some line weight. So one thing you notice I'm doing too is if there's a patch of that I want to be colored black, I'm just outlining it right now. I don't trust my hand, so I am going to use this this ruler. This is a Weems and Plath. I think it's some, like I said in a prior video, it's some kind of nautical ruler, but it works really well for parallel lines. I think you can find those, not necessarily that brand, but I think you can find those reasonably priced online. It's not like an item that I think you're going to find at a local store unless you have like some kind of eclectic, unique art store in your neighborhood that might actually carry something like that. I mean, or some kind of periodical, store. There's not many of those left anymore. We used to have this great, when I was a kid, this great newsstand in the town just south of me, which is a little bit bigger city. And I bought many comic books there when I was a kid. You know, my dad would go in there to buy books or the newspaper or maybe a lottery ticket or something, but they always were stocked up on comics and you know, Mad magazines and Cracked magazines and stuff like that were really popular when I was a kid. Kind of miss that, you know, those periodical stores. There used to be really cool mom and pop uh, like office supply but they had, you know, they had art supplies. I used to love going in there. And those kind of places are getting fewer and far between, depending on where you live. Actually, I used to get comics at a local drugstore that was just down the street from my grandparents all the time. They had a couple comic racks. Remember going in there and there was, you know, the ladies in there didn't know anything about handling comics, and you know, you always watched them like ringing them up and they'd fold them, or you know, you kind of cringed as you watched them handle the comic books because, you know, as a kid trying to, you know, with a collection, you're trying to keep everything in good, like, mint condition, and then, you know, it's like there's a lot of stress going to the register and hoping that that comic you buy makes it out and into the bag without getting bent or crease on the spine or whatever. But that's something that, you know, you have to deal with when you're buying comics from a store where, you know, people working there aren't collectors and they have no idea how to handle comics. But you know, as a kid, that was my only resource. There was really no comic book store anywhere near, you know, my house, so I had to buy my comics at the local pharmacies and drugstores and newsstand, maybe sometimes the grocery store, but they usually didn't have the greatest selection. It was usually just there were two drugstores that had comics, one on each end of the town, and then there was that newsstand where I bought a lot of comics. And then I can't remember. There used to be several companies that back then where you could mail order stuff. So, like, one of my buddies and I, we used to mail order some comics. You know, one of the reasons why I kind of struggle on, you know, weapons and stuff is that you have to break out a ruler or doing perspective and stuff like that, and it just feels like it really slows you down. But it is worth it. If I tried to freehand this rifle, I don't think it would look as accurate, as believable. Now, there are certain artists with looser styles that they can freehand like weapons and stuff like that and get away with it. And it all depends on the weapon design too. You know, if you're drawing like some sci-fi laser gun, sometimes that, you know, that's not as geometric as something like this uh, machine gun that Beachhead has here. So his left arm here is going to be predominantly in shadow, and I'm just outlining it here. There's going to be a little triangular area here that is highlighted rather than blacking the whole thing out. Now, if you're watching this and you were grew up on GI Joes and you're a GI Joe fan, maybe you're a younger person and you just got into GI Joe, collecting the newer action figures, and I mean they make some really sweet action figures now based on some of the original characters. I don't personally have a collection of those. That can be pretty pricey collecting some of the modern action figures. You know, now the price is about, on average $20 to $25 per figure. Granted, you get a fully posable action figure with all kinds of accoutrements, accessories, multiple weapons, great packaging. I think when I was little and these guys first came out, I think you could buy them for, man, $3-4 a piece. So yeah, I'm not into collecting, the modern action figures. My kids have a bunch of DC Universe figures that I bought them when they were younger. Now that they're teenagers, they could care less about them. But we do still have them. They also had their share of Star Wars figures. But yeah, action figures are just so pricey now. Personally, I don't know where some people get the money to collect as many of them as they do. You can spend a lot of money on collecting some of the modern action figures and toys and stuff. And people do. Let me know in the comments what I guess what I was getting at there was, who's your favorite GI Joe character? Is there a character you'd like to see me draw? Let me know. I might take you up on it. Now, I don't have a lot of the late era figures in the GI Joe line that came out. I probably stopped asking for toys when I started to get into junior high and stuff. So I probably stopped buying GI Joes around 6th grade, maybe 5th or 6th grade. So most of what I have is the earlier few years, probably, let me look here, wait, let's see. So I'm just looking on 3djoes.com. If you haven't heard of it, it's a great website. They have images of every character from every year, every action figure, every toy, every vehicle. And about 1989, that's about when I think I only have, one figure from that year. Rock and Roll, that's about it. So I guess about 89, I started to lose interest in G.I. Joe action figures, probably toys in general. Before that, I had, I've got a pretty decent collection. So that being said, I don't have a lot of the figures from 89 and on. Actually, a while ago I was going through some of the figures that came out after that, and some of them I've never seen before. I guess the later series of figures are quite collectible. Maybe because sales possibly were down and they're rarer figures. Now here I waited out the the zipper line and the center of the belt, because I wanted to shift that to the right a little bit to add a little bit more. It was just a little too upright. I want to angle it off to the side a little bit to add a little bit of a more twisting there to the waist. So I was using, to white that out, right now I'm using, I think you saw their Uniposca pens. They're all right. They work better on, this is deleter paper that I'm working on, and they don't work as great on deleter paper. I did just put an order in for some, I bought some of that deleter white out. So we'll see how that works, the deleter white. You have to brush it on with a brush. So I'm gonna test that out. Probably be testing that out in some later video. Probably take me about a week to get that. So it might not be in my next video, but maybe the video after that I'll try it out. But these Posca markers are all right. They're the type that you have to kind of shake up and press the tip. So the tip can get kind of worn out from pressing down. I have the let's see, 3mm, or no, it's a 0.9 to 1.3 millimeter, and then I also have the 8mm, which is pretty handy for like whiting out larger areas. I also would like to try, I gotta look up the brand. There's a little like flat whiteout marker that you can buy that I've seen used by several artists. And actually, I was looking on Amazon. It was pretty cheap. That whiteout marker seemed to work pretty well too. Now here I'm just using a Pentel brush pen. It's amazing that I've had this brush pen for a little while, and it doesn't dry out. I would expect something like this to dry out quickly. But however it's made, it just, as long as you keep the cap on, it doesn't seem to dry out. You do have to be careful with it, and sometimes you have to go back in with, I'll go back in with my Tombow pen and clean up whatever I've done with the brush pen. Just to sharpen up I'll go in and sharpen up the outline around some of these blocked in areas. Nor have I ever, I mean, years ago I used to use a brush to do some pen and inks. But it's been a while. It's so much more handy to take the cap off something like this rather than having to clean a brush when you're done. Just using like a ink bottle with a brush just seems messier to me. Well, it is messier. You gotta have something to rinse your brush out in. I mean, maybe you do. I mean, that was the method for years and years and years and years, and maybe you do end up with a better line. I'm just not interested in really trying that at this moment, because what I'm doing works for me. At least I think it works for me. So I'm just going to remind you during the video to, if you like this video, I've been waiting till the end to ask people to select the like button or subscribe or check out my website. So periodically during my videos, I'm just going to ask you, if you're liking the video so far, hit the like button if you would, or subscribe so that when I have new content out, it'll show up hopefully in your feed. And you can also check out my website at inkwarfare.com, where this illustration will be for sale, or it's currently there for sale as I speak. At least it should be. I haven't gotten an email that it was sold yet. And I do have other artwork on there if you just want to check it out, or you're welcome to stop by the website just to check it out. No purchase necessary. I also have t-shirts on there, these trading cards that I make, and I think that's going to be the focus of one of my next videos. It's working on some of the artwork for one of my next trading cards. So I really like the process of inking so much more than the penciling. I really struggle with hashing everything out in pencils beforehand, but it really is the way to go, because it's so much easier to fix things. Like right now, I'm going in with this Uniposca marker and cleaning things up. It's so much easier to fix things with an eraser and pencil than it is in inks. And in the end, your illustration looks cleaner, because then you don't have these white gobs, these white areas that you had to white out to correct something. I hope you don't mind if I don't talk all the time here. I'm normally more prone to say less. And not talk a lot. So it's kind of a struggle to come up with things to say here. So right here I'm using a Tombow Fudeno Suke pen. It's the blue one. The blue one's stiffer than the black one. And you should be able to find these, you can find them in a set. I actually even think I've seen these at Walmart in a set. Not to really give a big plug to Walmart, but if you don't have any other options, I'm pretty sure the last time I was there I saw the set. But you can also find these at any other, I know that Michaels carries them if there's a Michaels near you. I know that, I don't know if Michaels is a chain everywhere in the country. But you know what? If you can find a mom and pop art store, I'd say go there first. If there's one nearby, support your local businesses. And a lot of times, when you go into some, a local, mom and pop store, you tend to find things that are a little more unique. Maybe something that's not carried by the chain. And hopefully, they appreciate your business. Now, I'm not saying you have to drive. For me to go to the local art store that's locally owned, it's about almost an hour drive from my house. There's a really nice. It's a really nice art store that has like everything. And I have ordered from them online before. But I wouldn't call it local, because I've got to drive for an hour to get there. But there is a Michaels nearby, so I'll tend to go there, or else I order online, unfortunately. There's also a not really near me, but a little bit closer. There's a Hobby Lobby, which they do have some of the stuff. Sometimes they have like their own, brands. So like Man, I can't remember if the last time I was there that if they. I know they had microns. I don't know if they have the Faber-Castell pit markers, which I've come to really like the Faber-Castell pit markers. I don't know if it's true or not, but it seems like the ink's a little richer than the microns. I mean, I'd still use the microns. This mask here, doing something like this, you have to be really patient. Make sure your lines are somewhat similar as far as the distance from one another. And then they should taper off. You can try to, follow some of the contour of the face with your lines. They might bunch up higher above the brow there. But I just tried to keep them fairly uniform. Like I said earlier in the video, I just think Beachhead's mask, that they went the extra mile to sculpt out the head to make the mask look like. I mean, they could have just made a flat mask with no stitching, but they really went the extra mile to give you the impression that it's like a knit mask or balaclava. And then there's like this. I think this is like a turtleneck that pulls up over the nose. Which I don't know if I've ever seen that in real life. I mean, maybe it's like a British SAS thing. I don't know. So my lighting in this video is coming from the left-hand side. It'd be his right. But so that's what I'm, that's why the left side of his head there is more in shadow. And the shadows are being cast like on the arm there, as if the light was coming somewhat from the left-hand side. Now here I'm using a real fine 0.1 extra small Faber-Castell pit pen. And I really do like this pen. I think I've said in other videos, if I had to choose 2 ink pens to illustrate something like this with, I'd like to have this extra small and the Tombow pen. Now it does help to have something that like bigger, like the Pentel pen, or the pit Faber-Castell does make a brush, a fatter brush. I think they make a couple different thickness of brushes. I did just buy this one from Michaels that's it's an FM brush. It's the Pitt Artist Pen Feud Nib Medium. The tip's a little soft, but you probably see me using it more and more as my Tombow pen. It is really time for me to get a new Tombow pen out, because the point on mine is kind of rounding off a little bit, so I don't get as fine of a line. I'm thinking about my next, the next video, I'm going to show part of inking of some pencils that I've done for one of a trading card that I'm working on. It has to do with psychics and like demonic influence on psychics. So in the illustration, I've already penciled it. There's a psychic reading a crystal ball, and there's kind of a gnarly ugly demon type character influencing her or speaking to her without her knowing. So look for that in a future video. I'm probably going to break that up. I might ink just the psychic, and then maybe ink the demon in the like a series kind of situation where I break it up into 2 different videos. So here, a lot of the fabric is going to be tighter on the top of the forearm here, and you're going to have tension pulling at the elbow, so some of the fabric's going to be pulling away from the elbow, so you're going to see lines of tension there. Like the elbow's not going to have any wrinkles in it because that's going to be a really tight spot. Maybe the forearm won't, but whereas bicep is bent there, you're going to have some folds in the fabric, depending on what kind of fabric you're doing. Like for this illustration, I just wanted him to have a little bit looser fitting sleeves. This is one thing where a mirror helps out, like I did have a photo I took of my son where he was wearing a black sweatshirt, so the wrinkles in the fabric really didn't come through in the photo. It was kind of a dark photo. I was going to include that in my last video, but I didn't, sorry. But I also talked about having a mirror, and I had a hoodie on when I was penciling this out, I believe. And so I could look in the mirror and bend my arm and see what kind of folds that I got in the fabric from the hoodie. So once again, I just highly recommend, if you don't have a mirror to look at while you're drawing, I highly recommend having a mirror by your desk. Something big enough at least that you can see your whole face in. Maybe 2. I mean, you could have like a shaving mirror or a makeup mirror mounted to your desk, and then a bigger mirror off to the side. You can also take the mirror and use it to look at your illustration in reverse to see if you can pick up on anything that might be wrong with it. Or you can take a photo of it and flip it, with your phone. You can do stuff like that pretty quick. A lot of times that can reveal to you an area that's not quite right proportionally. So on his gloves there, I wanted some of the stitching to come through. Here on the sleeve there, this is a technique you can use for clothing in certain areas. It's almost like interlocking diamond shapes, like rounded diamond or football shapes. That's how your clothing often looks like when it wrinkles up, or like a sleeve when it's squished like an accordion, kind of like when you have it on and maybe it's a little longer than your actual arm. You tend to get more folds towards the wrist, and you can kind of use these, interlocking. They're not interlocking, but they kind of fit together almost like puzzle pieces with space between them, which are the higher points of the fold that are more like, diamond shaped or football shaped. So here I'm starting to add a little bit more line weight to some of the lines that I drew initially with that 0.3 Faber-Castell. And one thing that I kind of struggle with sometimes when it gets to this point, my hands rub so much across the drawing that I've picked up some of the lead, and you can have a difficult time seeing what your actual pencils were coming through. So sometimes you just have to get a little experimental, but I'm doing the best I can to get an idea and to trace over my pencils. That's where I've often thought about getting like a cotton glove to wear. Seen artists do that before, but it just hasn't been important enough to me to do that. You know, I like to listen to a lot of podcasts, and one of the podcasts I really can't get enough of, and I think it came to an end. I don't think they're doing it anymore, is the Draftsman podcast with Stan Prokopenko and Marshall. Can't remember Marshall's last name, but he just cracks me up. Like, if you haven't listened to that podcast, if you're an artist and you enjoy just listening to people talk about all these different facets of art, and it's a really good, entertaining podcast. And like I said, Marshall there really cracks me up. He has retained so much knowledge from books, and I mean it's unbelievable how he can just you mention a subject and he can sometimes word for word quote some resource that he studied on the subject. But he's a real character. I enjoy his singing. Stan's a good host too. I mean, those guys, you've got a more seasoned person like an artist and Marshall there, and then playing off that, Stan's a younger guy, at least comparatively, and just the chemistry there between the two, it's really entertaining. So if you haven't listened to it, the Draftsman podcast, I kind of was bummed to find out that they were bringing it to an end. But I have so many I can't remember how many they've done so far, but I have a lot more to listen to before I run out of them. Another podcast that I really enjoy is Rob Liefeld's podcast. If we're talking about art and comic book art, Rob is a very charismatic guy, and he really has a passion for all things comic book, entertainment, what have you. And he has a lot of knowledge, he's a big-time collector, collects artwork and original art, and he's got his huge comic book collection, and I really enjoy listening to him. That's I know recently launched his YouTube channel, but it was Rob Servations, the podcast, and I think they're calling it the Rob Liefeld Show now. But Rob's like high energy, um, just some really good subject, covers some really good subject matters, and he's enjoyable to listen to. I mean, it's just most of the time it's just him. I mean, he has had guests on there, but he really carries the show all on his own. I did just recently download. He just launched his own. I remember him saying earlier in the podcast when he started him that he had no longer owned the license to Youngblood, and I haven't picked up. Somehow he's either gotten that license back or temporarily or permanently. I'm not sure, and he's come back out with a new Youngblood series. So he's only selling it on Whatnot, I think. And I recently downloaded the app, but man, I can't get over how much he's getting for the issues. Maybe I missed like some of the initial like releases where you could pick these. I think the first series is called Last Blood. Maybe correct me if I'm wrong. But right now you can't get anything on there for less than $30-$40, and I'm just not going to do that. It'd be nice to see his issues get more reasonably priced, but if he can get $30-$40, then if people are paying that, then I guess there's nothing wrong with that. Another comic-related YouTube channel that I really enjoy, Mark Millar's interviews on his channel. Can't remember if it's called Miller World or Miller Time or something like that, but he seems like a super down-to-earth guy. Just really, I enjoy his interviews. He's so polite, like a really polite English gentleman. I'd like to see that come through more in his books. A lot of times his books are like ultra violent, a lot of unnecessary language and stuff like that. Not that they're not anything geared, and I mean intentionally so. Not much of anything he does is geared towards a younger audience or suitable for a younger audience. He did just come out with a second series of his character that's based on his character Huck. And I think I have the first two issues. I've got to get caught up on that. I wanted to support that because it is more of a Huck is almost kind of similar to like a Clark Kent type character, only a little bit more. I guess I don't know a whole lot about the character yet, other than those first couple issues, but maybe a little bit more simple-minded. I'm not sure. I haven't figured that out yet, but I kind of wanted to support that because normally his comics are more adult-oriented, and I just like to see him do more work that's appeals more to a mass audience. I think he has the talent to do it, and like I said, I mean, you can, he'll on his interviews, he's very well spoken. I don't ever really hear him use any kind of like coarse language or anything like that, and I really wish that had come through in some of the works that he publishes. One thing that he has done in the past that I really appreciate is he's tried to keep some of the prices low on his comics, because like you're getting up, and a lot of comics are about $4 or $5 an issue, and that is pretty pricey, you know. So I really appreciate him. You know, he doesn't do this with all his books, but he has had some books that he was trying to keep the price down on. I think the channel's called Miller Time, maybe. I'm gonna look it up here. Yeah, Millar Time, or Miller Time. So check out that on YouTube. He's interviewed, you know, quite a few heavy hitters. Actually, the most recent one was Eric July. He's done Travis Charest, Joe Madureira, Rob Liefeld, Jeremy Adams, Mike Barron. He's not afraid to have a variety of illustrators on his channel either. Brian Bolin. Um, that's one thing I like about him. He doesn't shy away from, you know, people. Joe Quesada's on there. He doesn't shy away from people just because maybe they um, might not agree with him politically or spiritually or anything like that. So that's one thing I like about him. So I'm making these little pouches on the belt look a little wrinkly. They have like a heavy seam on the edge on the figure. So I wanted that to come through in the illustration. I did see I did end up fixing that zipper seam there. I just kind of angled it to the right a little bit, just to give a little bit more twist to the waist. I couldn't go too far because I had already put the one pouch in there, so I'd have to erase it and relocate it. I went just far enough where I didn't think I had to do that, and it still looks all right. Now the shoulder, deltoid here, I didn't like that line because the angle wasn't quite right. So I'm whiting that out. Now, as I go along here, I'm thinking about uh, things it'd be his left side, it'd be on the right side, looking at the illustration. How dark and how far I should go to just block things out in black rather than try to shade them with feathering and stuff and cross hatching. So I'm kind of even evaluating this magazine pouch on his torso here, or abdomen. At this point, I'm thinking about blacking out, like putting a heavier shadow there in black. It's just I didn't do it in my pencils, so I'm a little apprehensive initially. But sometimes you just have to go for it. You can, if you go for it, you can always white it back out, I guess. But it is nice to have that all figured out in your pencils. I wasn't quite liking the eyes here, so I'm going to do a little bit to fix that. I'm actually going to white out some areas here. I didn't think they look squinty enough, and I just was getting a little busy there around the eyes. I wanted some of the tone of the forearm to come through on this, through the shirt, but not too heavily. The most pronounced muscles typically on the forearm are going to be your carpi radialis and brachioradialis muscles. Those are the muscles that attach kind of above the elbow, just below the bicep. So if you look at a lot of muscular guys, like I've mentioned, looking at baseball cards and stuff, baseball players tend to have pretty big forearms from swinging bats, and that muscle tends to stick out more. And then your kind of the line of the bone line there, of the ulna, that tends to stick out too, and as the muscles of the extensor carpi ulnaris muscles attached there. Tends to be pronounced, so you end up with a kind of a lower line that's heavy on the bottom of the forearm there. So here I'm going to kind of experiment with, before I start blacking this out completely, experiment with how I'm going to shade this cast shadow over this magazine belt, or whatever you want to call it. It's kind of part of his shirt on the action figure. So these magazine holders are part of this vest that he's wearing. So here I'm just kind of working this out again as far as how I want to do my final render here on his abdomen. Now, one thing to keep in mind, your overall 20,000 foot view, everything that, if you're drawing the human figure, everything that you're drawing has some kind of a round shape to it. So you do want that to, come through, I guess, depending on your style, that, if you were drawing a tin can or something, or a cylinder, you would shade that a certain way just to make the it believable as a round cylinder. So like same thing here. When you're drawing like the human form, there's going to be a highlight edge, like probably the area that's going to be the highest values are going to be right under his elbow there, along the rib cage and his side, and then as it rounds around to the right, to the right, that stuff's going to be more in the shadow, like the magazine holder, like this pouch. I decided to just kind of black this pouch out more or less, and his belt, just to kind of differentiate it from the pouch and the belt on the other side, which are a little bit lighter in value. So that gives that impression of, that the pouch and the belt are more hidden shadow on the one side than the other. I probably could have blacked out the straps there completely on both sides, and it would have looked fine. So I just picked up this FM Pit pen. It's a, let's see, Pit Artist Pen Feud Nib Medium, and it's kind of like a Fudano Senki pen there, but it's a little thicker and it kind of seems a little softer. But I like their other pens, so I'm trying it out. It works pretty well. I think it doesn't lay down as fine a line as the Tombow pen does. I mean, if you're really delicate with it, it will. So these little pouches on the backpack are going to cast a shadow onto the rest of the backpack here. So the side of the main structure of the backpack. So I'm going to be working that out a little bit, trying to figure out how dark to go. Right now, I think the his side, like his side of his torso and his shoulder, are kind of getting lost in the backpack, like blended together, because the values are pretty similar. So I'm going to address that at some point here, just to kind of I'm going to darken up the side of the pouches that's in this side of them, that would be the darkest plane on those pouches. So here I'm going to go for it on this ammo pouch on the vest. Just going to darken it up. I hadn't penciled this out. I'm just kind of feeling it out right now to see how it's going to look. And I'll look at it for a little bit and I'll come back to it. So with his legs, you know, I think, like I said earlier, you got to remember that depending on what your style is, I mean, if you just have a style that just uses fine lines, it's not as important. But like if you do a lot of rendering, his leg is round. It's kind of to simplify it, it's kind of a tubular shape. So you want to treat it like as if you're drawing a cylinder, in a way, especially if you're drawing from imagination. And you know, the reference photo I had didn't have it wasn't very well lit. So most of this I'm coming up, other than the reference was helpful as far as how the pants stretched and stuff, the reference that I used. Same thing here. I'm just adding these opposing lines to kind of give a dimension to the leg here. They don't really, you know, your lines like that, they don't really have anything to do with the detailed structure of the pants or the legs. They're more just to shade it, to add value. And you can get away with that with pen and ink. You know, he wasn't a comic book artist, but one artist to check out who really used all these lines to add value and shading, and they didn't really have anything to do with the the clothing or anything like that, as far as the details in the clothing. They just were to make it look, to add different shades of gray and stuff. Was Charles Dana Gibson. He did a lot of advertising, pen and inks and stuff back I think in the early 1900s. But even his faces, he was real heavy on his line work and stuff, just to add shading and stuff to the faces, and it works. I mean, it's really interesting to see what how he used line and parallel lines and stuff like that to shade the human figure. I definitely recommend checking him out. That was Charles Dana Gibson. Now, I hadn't intended for this image to be like a nighttime image or anything like that, but I'm really trying hard to add a lot of solid blacks, more than I normally would. It's just a goal of mine to get better at using like blacking out things. I think, like I've said before, I'd really like to shoot for like a 50-50. I find that like a lot of illustrators, if they're using kind of like a 50-50 mix, kind of like Lee Weeks, he uses, I think he's can be about 50-50, not all the time, and it's super effective. And he doesn't go into a lot of super detail. But there's a reason why he keeps getting covers and stuff like that, and it's because the work that he does is incredible. And he does, like I said, minimal, like, he doesn't get super detailed. But you look at a cover that's done by Lee Weeks, and you know it's done by Lee Weeks. He's really good at that noir kind of like shading, where he'll like I said, there's a lot of blacked out areas on his figures. So I finally decided that I'm just going to go for it and black this out. Not all of it, just kind of drape a shadow across here. Your shadows don't have to be perfectly resemble the object. That's, if you look at any shadows, they're distorted. So sometimes the more distorted, the more effective the shadows are, as long as they kind of resemble the whatever's casting them. But there's some liberty you can take, because no one really knows what the shadow looks like that you're trying to cast. I mean, as long as it looks believable. When light strikes something and casts a shadow, it can have a really varied effect. So you can kind of get creative with your shadows, especially cast shadows on the ground. So I just think his face isn't quite dark enough on the darker side of the face here. So I want to bring out this cheekbone and darken up the side of the head a little bit. And I might add some more line work to the forehead. Right now I am bouncing all around here, trying to clean up this shadow here. So I'm just going to leave, instead of blacking the whole thing out, I'm leaving the edges of those separate magazine slots in this pouch on the vest, just so you know that there is a dividing line there. Now, if I black that out, your eye would probably fill that in. I was reading a book. I might have been Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain. I can't remember what book, but it's pretty interesting that it might have been in that book. They spoke about how how much detail your eye fills in just from memory when you look at something. So like when you view a scene, any scene, like you go look at your wall or whatever, your brain is actually filling in a lot of the detail without you even observing it. So you're not really visually taking it in. You've seen that wall so many times, or you've seen, something else, like a landscape so many times that your brain fills in a lot of the detail. I thought that was a pretty interesting concept. I'm not, and maybe there's varied, just like in anything. I mean, the varied opinions about that as far as that, does that actually happen, or is your eye quickly taking in all that information? Because everything that's in periphery, the idea was that everything that's in your peripheral vision is being filled in, but just by your memory, and you're not actually faster than you can observe it with your eye. It's pretty interesting to think about that. So that's why sometimes when things get blacked out, your eye fills in the details, and it actually sometimes it looks more realistic sometimes. I might be mistaken. Maybe that was in the book, drawing or not drawing fast, thinking fast and slow. That might have been in that book. I'm not sure. If you know when you're watching this, you know where that, if it was in one of those two books, correct me in the comments. But still, nevertheless, it's an interesting concept to think about. So my cast shadows here, I didn't, I'm just going to start on this upper pouch, but I didn't think was quite dark enough. Like I said, I'm kind of like thinking about how I can bring out the edge of his body there as opposed to and differentiate it from the backpack, because right now they kind of look a little too like they blend into one another too much. Same with this pouch. I decided to black this pouch out just because it looked too similar to the other one, and the pouch on the right hand side is going to be more in shadow. Now I'm going to take some parallel lines and draw them in here on the side of the head just to darken it up a little bit. This, if this was being colored, which I have no intention of coloring this in the computer or anything, you really probably don't have to go to such detail to add shading and stuff. That's gonna happen in the coloring process, unless you want it to stand alone as a black and white image, to be a solid standalone image that doesn't rely on being colored to bring out any of the values and shading there. So yeah, like if I knew this was going to be colored, I might not go to such extreme. Here I'm just adding some more parallel lines. Parallel lines really just adding a darker plane there. It has nothing to do with the actual the details of the structure of the pouch. It's starting to look like the backpack's not blending into the shoulder and the side of the torso there. So I'm just going to black these out for the most part. Just to bring a little bit more contrast here. You know, sometimes you just can't be too in love with your line work. You've got to be prepared to do something like that black, because for the overall image it might look better for you to just black something out and darken it. Like I could have said, "Oh man, I really like the way that I shaded the side of that pouch with these parallel lines and the detail of the wrinkles in the pouch. I really don't want to cover that up." And sometimes you just have to sacrifice that, because it's just not working. On its own it might, but for the whole image it might not work. So on his forehead here, I'm just going to work out with the pencil. I think I'm going to add some feathered lines here, just where the plane changes. That can be pretty effective if you, like, right as you know that you have the top of his forehead transitions into the front of his forehead there. If you add a series of like feathered lines, like here I added two sets, and then there's like a light area in between. That can be effective if you look at my video that I did on the G.I. Joe character Spirit on his legs. I did that where I used a lot of sets of like parallel feathered lines to kind of to give the impression of the different planes and the muscles in his legs. I think that's effective, and I use that often. I actually could have done that on his forearm there, but I'm not going to, because I think the forearm's getting a little busy. But that's a trick you can use to, like, say on the legs, you know, where the planes are changing, you can use those feathered parallel lines, and they don't have to be the same length the whole way across. Like, you know, like on the left side of his forehead there, they're a little shorter than they are on the right, because the right's going to be a little darker. It'd be his left, but our right. Now the grenade's going to cast a little shadow here. I probably could have made that shadow a little oblong. Shadows are very rarely, they very rarely perfectly resemble the object that's casting them. There's usually some kind of distortion in shadows. So I'm just adding a little bit of these little dashes here to the little wrinkles in the fabric that I blacked out. I think that's effective. It kind of breaks up the solid line a little bit. Adds more of a transition from dark to light. So now I'm going to address this, the knife on his leg here. Try to fix that a little bit. Which is going to involve using a little white out and letting it dry. You know, when you white things out, that Uniposca stuff does dry fairly fast. You know, you probably can get back on it in less than a minute, maybe even 30 seconds. But I try to let it dry a little bit because I've noticed that, especially with like microns, and it'll do it with this Tombow pen too, and the tips on the Pitt pens. That sometimes you get some of the pen will pick up some of the white out, and it'll kind of clog the pen. You got to kind of clean the tip. So it is helpful to let that white out dry completely before you go over it. So here I'm kind of doing the same, what I talked about earlier. There's a series of parallel lines where the plane changes. Just helps give a little dimension to the scabbard that the knife is in there. So the rifle, I just decided to use a series of parallel lines, like varied parallel lines, to shade it in. I didn't get real crazy. You can there's an effect of like reflected light that you can use on like a piece of steel or something, you know, something like that. That usually a rifle has more of like a. I don't even think they use blue coating anymore, really that much, which is I think a little bit glossy. Now they just have. I don't know what it's played with. Just mostly has a dull, flat, like satin finish. So rather than bore you with, 15 minutes of me drawing parallel lines on this rifle, I'm gonna be cutting away and coming back with it pretty much completed here. So yeah, so here I just I kind of changed it up depending on which panel part of the rifle I was adding the parallel lines to, which my hand is covering up here right now. But so to kind of differentiate parts of the rifle. Now here on the arm, I'm just adding some parallel lines to add a little bit of shading to the outer edge of the wrist and the forearm. And I'm using a extra small pit pen there. I don't know if Pitt stands for anything. If anybody's watching this video knows why Faber-Castell calls their pens Pitt artist pens. Kind of sounds kind of odd actually, but I just wonder if that stands for anything. I didn't do any research on it. I do like them though. I'm getting pretty close to the end here. Fairly close. We're almost there. If you've made it this far in the video, we're getting there. This has been if I had put both the pencils and the inks together on it, this would be a pretty long video. And I did speed up the clips. Not a lot. I usually take in, I'll edit it all together. I'll max out the speed on the video clips in iMovie. Then I'll save the video. Then I'll load it back in and then maximize it again. That's a little trick in iMovie to get to like a faster speed. This time I just used the standard fastest, maxed out the speed as much as I could without exporting the recording and then importing it again and then bumping up the speed. And there's probably some artists that actually, I mean, if you were to watch this and I didn't say that I bumped up the speed, there's probably some artists that do work this fast. That's not me. So here I decided that I probably should put the camo patches on his pants there, the camo pattern. So what I'm going to do is just use my blue pencil to lay it out, and then I'll go in with my ink pen and just render them as in parallel lines. Kind of, I was on the fence about whether I should do this or not, like if that was something that, if it eventually, since I had no plan on coloring this image, that it might be a good idea, because he does have camouflage pants that he wears. So that's what I'm doing here, just laying it out with my Color Erase blue pencil. I'm not even going to use a lead pencil. I'm just going to go right into it from the blue pencil and with inks. And I did decide that I should probably add maybe kind of a horizon line. And I had intended to put like one of those, I'm still like here toying with the idea of putting one of those steel barricades or obstacle. I'm not sure what they call them. I eventually canned that idea, but just for the sake of time, like I could keep going and going and going, like, and do a really detailed background, but I decided not to. So this is the way I'm going to render the pattern on his pants here, with just parallel lines. Let me know what you think. I just chose that as kind of the best way, where the lines aren't really conforming to any of the planes on the leg or anything like that. It's just basically to give an idea what the shapes are. I could have outlined them too, but I decided not to. I just wanted to stay real basic. One thing I could have done here is, as these little, I don't even know what you call them, like these shapes in the fabric, as they come out to the high points on the legs there, I could have spaced the lines out a little bit more and made the lines tighter as they came around the outside edge of the leg. Maybe if I were to do that again, I'd kind of dabble with that idea and see how it looked. I could go in with white out and kind of lighten up the shapes that cross the center of the leg there, where the fabric's tightest and the light would hit, like the high spots where the light would be hit, bouncing off of the leg at the most with the most impact. If you're just going to give another plug here, if you've made it this far in the video and you've appreciated what you've watched, or liked what some of my other content there, if I could just ask you to select the like button, that kind of gives me an idea of whether you actually like it or not. So if the like button is the little thumbs up there in the bottom right hand side, and if you would like, you could subscribe to my channel, and then as I put new content out, it should pop up in your feed. And I do have a website where this image is currently for sale. It's inkwarfare.com, and I also am on Instagram at ink.warfare. So I decided to add kind of a triangular shape to the horizon, so that he's standing on the edge of the beach, so the the area there that's in a triangular shape there is going to be like the water and the horizon line. So for the purpose of this video, I'm just the background is going to be very basic. Just going to parallel line this horizon with upright lines here, and give the faintest impression of waves in the water. Just something real quick, and I started with the the water being closest to the viewer on the left hand side there, and then trailing away just to kind of lead the eye a little bit. It helps to lead the eye across the page because it's almost like arrow shaped. I think it's, when you do something like that, it's much better than just drawing the shoreline like it matches the horizon. So you just pretty much have these parallel lines. That's kind of dull. So if you can, add some, and it adds a little bit of perspective to the drawing too. Like I said, starting with more water on the left there and having it trail off kind of like a pointer, it draws your eye across the page. And I think it looks more realistic that way too. Alright guys, that wraps it up for this video. And if you like the video, please select the like button, subscribe to my channel, check out my website, inkwarfare.com, or find me on Instagram at ink.warfare. But once again, like I said, this artwork will be for sale on my website. Actually, it's currently for sale if it hasn't sold yet. And I just appreciate anybody that made it this far through the video. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.